Hello, everyone. Welcome to another OZeWAI Professionals. Very excited to have everyone here today to join us. I'm going to start with an acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm meeting today here in Canberra, and pay respect to the elders of the Ngunnawal Nation, both past and present. And I extend this respect to all Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander peoples in attendance today. And if you do, if you'd like to put your name and where you're sharing your respects from in the chat, feel free to do that, as it's a great way to introduce you to others that are joining. Welcome today. We've got another wonderful session. I'm also just going to introduce, we've got Tina joining us from Captions Live. So we are actually trying out these live captions as we go. This will be interesting. It was interesting getting it set up on Zoom. So hopefully we can do more of this. And that comes from a lot of the wonderful support that members provide for OZeWAI, so that we can actually use the facilities and support the industry. So I'm going to just do a little summary about OZeWAI. OZeWAI used to be an annual conference. We now run these online events. We partner with in-person events. We run local meetups. We are now a professional organisation here in Australia. We've been running for nearly a year that way, so please support us. Join OZeWAI. There's there's an advocacy cost of $50 a year, and if we do that and get ourselves sorted in the next week or so, you can join at any of those rates in June and get the next year's membership included in that. So keep an eye out for that for our next newsletter. We are also very excited about some of the projects that we run, and also the people that we've met in different ways. And it was wonderful to have Lisa talk and Rosie actually at PWAC earlier this year, where we kind of decided that this topic could be continued. So I'm going to go to Amanda now, and if we can, Amanda, if you want to do an intro and then take it around to the panel. And I'll jump into the questions document to have things ready. We've got a lot there, and we'll go from there. This is how we roll. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. Thanks, Bree. Wow. Good evening. Good afternoon. I saw there was even a 4 a.m. in DC. Good morning to everyone. My name is Amanda Mace, and I am co-chair along with Bree of OZeWAI. So because there are actually quite a few people in the room, one of the things we'll ask is everyone to just keep muted except for our panelists, because we want to be able to hear them. But if you have any questions along the way, I'm going to ask that you pop them in the chat. Bree and I have a running Google Doc that you'll see me looking up towards, and it's me checking out questions coming up. And we'll try to get as many questions answered as we can. We actually have already quite a few. So if your question doesn't get answered, please feel free to reach out, and we'll do our best to get the panelists to answer your questions via email or some other mode, or maybe we'll just have to do another session. So with all of that said, I am incredibly excited about our three panelists today, all who I've known Rosie for quite some time. I've gotten to get to know Rosie for a long time now, Lisa through W3C work, and Rose, who I recently met. So I'm very excited to introduce you to all of them. But I guess what we'll do is I'm going to go from what I see on my screen and ask each of you to introduce yourself, and just a little bit about accessibility and how it impacts your role, and neurodiversity in your role. So Rose, you're the first on my screen. So welcome to the panel. Thank you.
Hello, welcome. Thanks for joining us on your lovely evening or morning, depending where you're tuning in. I am calling in, and the land I work on is the traditional nation of Kulin Nation, the Wurundjeri people, and I'm coming from Naarm today. My pronouns are she, her, and I work at Aquent, a global solutions recruitment company, and I specialize in recruiting and supporting all sorts of corporates in human-centered design, and the last 2 years have been specializing in helping accessibility teams build their team with talented individuals. So a bit of a niche area, but absolutely love it. Personally, I am very neurospicy. I got diagnosed last year with ADHD. No surprise to anyone in my life, but an affirming process for myself. I'm also queer, and for me, I bring that up today because we are in Pride Month, so it's a special month to celebrate that as well. But really excited to be here, and can't wait to hear from the other panelists.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rose. Rosie, you're next on my screen, coming from lovely Tasmania. Can you please do a little intro?
Thanks, Amanda, and thanks, Rose, before me. Hi, folks. It's brilliant to be here. My name's Rosie Putland. My pronouns are she, her. I'm calling in from the land of the Palawa and Pakana people. I'm here in Lutruwita, Tasmania, and we've got some brilliant Tasmanian representation in the call that I can see. Shout out to Diana and also Bo. I believe I don't think we've met yet, but I see that you signed up to our meetup group. We've just started the Tasmanian Digital Accessibility and Inclusive Design Community meetup here in Tasmania as well, which is really, really exciting. I run a business called Modality Co. We're a small digital accessibility consultancy that focuses on helping small businesses in their digital accessibility journeys. And we run training and also do consulting and coaching. And we're really focused on how we can give back to the community through our social enterprise, giving back to the community through community meetups and other ways that we can support the disability and accessibility community here in Tasmania as well. I'm proudly autistic and proudly disabled. I have a physical disability, so accessibility is not only an amazing professional interest and career for me, but it's also a deeply personal one. And sometimes we talk about that for us as neurodivergent and disabled folks who are also accessibility consultants, it doesn't really stop after you switch off after work. I'm still facing accessibility barriers in my everyday life as well. So a personal, professional. I also married an accessibility consultant, so we're very accessibility focused in this house. We often joke about that our cats know a lot about digital accessibility as well. But I'm so happy to be on this panel and chatting all things accessibility and neurodivergence.
I kind of wish I can just imagine like dinner with WCAG, like arguments happening. It would just be epic. I talk about WCAG at my dinner table and my husband and children look at me like I'm insane. So yeah, I can only imagine. Lisa, last but not least, based out of beautiful Israel, can you tell us a little bit about you?
So I'm long-time accessibility person. I've done I work in inclusion research and consulting. I was involved in the original draft of ARIA, building the ontology there. A long time involved in creating WCAG. But my focus has always been actually for improving the inclusion for neurodivergence and cognitive and learning disability. In that way, I'm the facilitator for the task force that's inside the Web Accessibility Initiative, WAI and AG, and another group, APA, for what we can do for inclusion for cognitive learning disabilities, also neurodiversity, obviously, and we've actually increased the scope to mental health issues as well. Mental health affects cognitive abilities, so it was a huge overlap. We were basically doing it, so it was more filling in the gaps and doing it properly. In terms of accessibility, one of the things I love about accessibility is it's a problem that we can actually solve. We know what to do, or we can figure it out, and we can then include people. There's a huge range in terms of the impact, whether it's just people being able to participate in the conversation or people being able to live independently. In some cases, and not that infrequently, it's a case of life and death. We know that people with learning cognitive disabilities have a lower life expectancy, and significantly lower. And we have good documentation of cases where the inaccessibility has been a factor. So, for instance, if you can't make independently mammogram appointment or a doctor's appointment, you don't have equal access to these life-saving services. So depending on the content, it will change how absolutely mission critical this is. But and then another aspect for people who are less concerned about this as a priority is also just a general cost to society. When things aren't accessible, what we do is we have more caregivers, and those caregivers can be unofficial caregivers. It can be a parent or a niece or who knows, right? But it's taking their time and it's costing them, and it's because there weren't any people with there wasn't a diverse user group in user testing. You know, it's that simple. So you know, that's what accessibility means to me. Everything from just general participation to actually improving life expectancy for people.
Thank you, Lisa. That's amazing. So this particular panel is one that I think we've been wanting to do for a long time because it is such a big topic. And in fact, I kind of prefaced the starting of the panel with how many questions we have, is I don't think we'll get to all of them because this can go off in 100 different ways. I'll try and keep us focused as best I can. But of course, like, we do have 90 minutes, so under 90 minutes now, but we do have 90 minutes to chat and discuss these things. So for the purposes of today, what I'll do is I'm going to direct a question. I'm probably going to pick on a couple of you panelists to answer that question, maybe even all of you, depending on the question. But I want to start with where you see the key barriers. Now, for a couple of the panelists, that might be something that you see as a key barrier for yourself or what you're seeing within the industry. And I'd actually, Rosie, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you. What do you see as like a key barrier for online access right now for neurodiversity?
Yeah, it's a really broad question. And it's a really difficult one. When I think about it and I think about the barriers that neurodivergent people are facing online, I like to categorize it into like 4 main categories. And I have it as, and these are things that are really applicable to me as well: understanding, clarity and precision, sensory, and consistency. And these are probably the 4 main areas that I see the barriers that I face every day falling into. And I'll try and provide like an example for each one of them. The first one, understanding. I think about things about multimodality, and now I named my business Modality Co. And you'll probably see why, because I really love harping on about multimodality, which is all about just providing different options for people to engage with the same content. And, you know, some people really benefit from text and data and all those sorts of things, and other people benefit from visuals and videos and different ways of engaging in content. I think that's one of the most important things when we think about understanding, is providing different ways for people to be able to engage in content as well. And I think in accessibility, people often get scared. You know, we talk about screen reader users a lot, and we talk about visuals and how we need to make sure that they're accessible for people who are blind and have low vision. And sometimes people think that means we shouldn't use visuals because it's too hard to write alt text or whatever their argument may be about it. But actually the case is that we need to use visuals as much as we can, because it's really important to other groups as well, and providing as many options as possible for people. In clarity and precision, I always think about forms. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, you probably have seen me complaining about forms before, and how difficult they are to complete, and unclear they are. And Lisa, I really thought about something you said then. Recently, I had to go into hospital and complete a pre-admission form, and accessing healthcare is such an important part, and just trying to complete the form. And my husband's in the meeting here today as well, and he'll tell you he had to complete it because I couldn't, because the questions weren't clear enough. It was really difficult to understand what they were actually asking. All of those sorts of things as well really come into that. And I'll finish up with one more example before I wrap up my answer. But really in the sensory area as well, thinking about that autoplay and flashing content, probably the bane of my existence, especially as someone who's an accessibility professional, often having to audit websites that are inaccessible to me. And I'm diving into the code to try and like get this carousel or get this flashing content, just like remove it so I can audit the rest of the page, because I literally can't look at the page or can't concentrate on the content without this flashing things that is giving me a headache, or just making it impossible to concentrate on the other content. So just a few different examples that are barriers that are really specific to me, but also barriers that I see my peers facing and I've seen in a professional context through usability testing as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think all of those things, as an accessibility professional, I think we've come across them, and it's really important to hear that sort of first person encounter to be able to go, this is the impact. It actually always comes back to the impact on the user. Rose, what about you? What do you think is sort of the key barriers right now when it comes to neurodiverse people?
Well, I love what you said, Rosie, just about medical forms, because I think that's a whole, like a whole, we could go down that rabbit hole. And then also I really resonated what you said, Lisa, just about like people that are actually doing the user testing and sitting in the room and designing these digital products, is accessibility at the front of their mind, and who are the people that are in those rooms. So both very, very, already some good gold there. For me, I'm going to talk, and I just want to be very open that it's my lived experience of being ADHD. I don't work as an accessibility expert, but I help find amazing ones. And I've channeled that into, if we talk about online in my job, I work in recruitment. If we're talking about hospital forms, let's think about job applications and applying for the job process. And I call it the front and back of a t-shirt, like what you say you do, but what you actually do. And I think there's a lot of businesses where that doesn't connect. And I don't think, and we could delve into this a little bit later, but I think the connection there is that we are all going to, unfortunately, the old days of bringing in your resume to the, the cafe, maybe still, but not businesses anymore. It's an all online experience. And I see businesses really look at upgrading their customer, thinking customer, but what about their employee experience and their hiring process from day one, from engagement? And as someone who, has a lived experience, I get very overwhelmed with lots of text, and also very ambiguous text as well. And I think job ads fail pretty heavily on that when they're like, someone that's done this and that kind of area. So I think if I think about that digital experience, that's really where my passion points lie on. We all have jobs here in this webinar. We all do a job. How do we get into that job? What are the barriers that, and what are the things that we can do to make that onboarding, training, offboarding process way more accessible than it currently is? And it is a lot of digital touch points. I mean, LinkedIn has just come out with 1 billion users. So one of the biggest corporate platforms around, so we're moving more online to that space. So yeah, those are sort of my things. And then exactly what you said, Rosie, about carousels, like I just get very overwhelmed, with distractions. I've recently turned my phone on to black and white in the evenings. I don't know if any other, there's a accessibility setting in your phone that you can turn it into black and white, and that really helps me calm down and stops my overstimulate, and those are things I really didn't know that I could put into place unless you had out Google accessibility shortcuts on your phone. So yeah, Bo does the same. So anyway, that's sort of I just wanted to preface that's my lens today, that I'm going to come across as more of that person that sort of gets people into jobs, sees the process for most corporates, and I'm trying to actively help change from the inside. So
that's amazing, Rose. I love the work that you do. I think it's fantastic. Lisa, I want to take what Rosie and Rose both have sort of commented on around user research and end user testing and ask you what you think the barriers are, because people aren't using, at least not enough, the research that W3C has done, the work that the Cogna group has done. What are the barriers you think for teams from using sort of the research that has been done or conducting their own user research?
Oh, wow. Barrier for teams. I think the first one is that they're not aware. I think that's the biggest barrier. They're not aware that the documents that we have, so they know about WCAG, but they might not know that there is a supplement for inclusion for people with learning cognitive disabilities. We've tried to make that supplement really address teams' needs. So it's less about conformance and more about what would you make for a team. So some teams work on user needs, so we've got the same objective, the same stuff portrayed as user needs. We've got it as a design guide. We've got it as focus group questions or user testing questions, or things to be looking for. We also have on our wiki developer resources, and I'm sure a lot of you have resources that you'd be happy to share. If you're in a research project, it's actually like a tick, it's shared on the W3C wiki or something. Things like consent forms for people with intellectual disabilities. Oh, you can download it, change the logo, change the name of the project, and you've got this really accessible consent form. So a lot of people are thinking, oh, this is very scary. I wouldn't know how do we have to redo, how do we handle consent? How do we do a meeting? We'd have to redo our guides. Just copy it, download it. The support is there. The other, I think, attitude issue is it's a bit discriminatory, isn't it? People think there's no one with learning cognitive, mental health, neurodivergent issues in my age group. And people have actually said to me, and I mean, in the WCAG world, a lot of people know that I'm heavily dyslexic, and when I started working on this, I realized I was also autistic. Too old to be diagnosed, but there you go. People have said to me, well, I write things for people, examples for people who work in web design and HTML, and it's complex stuff. And so no one with these issues would be in a target in my audience. And I'm looking at them and I'm saying, could you do the ontology that I did for ARIA? Because I have these issues. And I think one of the important things, well, there are a lot, we should be including everyone, but also some issues that they could develop. And so you have a lot of knowledge, and then you develop some issues, and you're still part of that profession, right? And then obviously a lot of people have local cognitive issues. So for instance, auditory discrimination or visual discrimination, or the working memory might be short. That's a number of things you can hold in your mind at the same time, which is totally necessary for copying, say, your code that they sent to your phone. But your analytical skills can be way above average, and you can be an engineer, and you can be doing all these other things. It could be the other way around. You can have a disability with numbers, but you're a professor in comparative literature from the 18th century. I mean, there's so many different ways that people can have these issues. Say they're not in your target audience, I find that really hard to believe. So I think it's just awareness of the people who are maybe hiding their issues. And sometimes I was working one of these huge corporations, and every time they updated their intranet stuff, a whole bunch of people took early retirement, you know, because it's like they'd learned the last thing, and now to learn the new, you know, and improved. Not that was sarcasm.
It's just
but,
too hard.
You know, yeah, it's like, well, I'm too old for this. You're not too old. You're not too old. It's not accessible for you. And maybe that's another part of the attitude problem, is we don't blame people in a wheelchair that they can't get up the steps, right? But when you go, well, I went to the bank with my daughter, and they said, well, why can't you just do this online? And I said, well, because you blocked me out again because of the password. I've typed it in wrong, you know, when you copy the code over and stuff like that. And they said, oh, it's easy. And I said, I'm dyslexic, I can't copy it over. And he said, no, you can. And my daughter was saying, it's disability, she can't, it's your responsibility. Go for it. You know? That's the thing. You'll get blamed. You'll get people told, oh, it's easy, it's simple, just listen, go back, do that. And you know, and that's why in our documents we tend to use words like impairment and disability, because from a legal point of view, there's a time and a place. We may think of it as neurodivergence, and it is to a large extent, but it's also, we can say it's a disability and you have to give accommodation. And I think that it's that simple, you know. That's a legal UN treaty, you know. So that's the yeah. So I think education, getting a broader awareness that it's really important.
That's present in there. I think that's a really, it's fascinating to me. I'm 11 years in the industry, so not as long as you, Lisa, but a long time. And the fact that we're still educating is probably something that never ceases to amaze me. We continue to have to educate. There's so much to pick up. This is going to be such a good session. There's so much to pick up in just that. I'm going to pick up, I think, on just the broad spectrum, for lack of a better term, around neurodivergence. And accommodating, particularly, Lisa, you mentioned it as well, where you have potentially more than one barrier, you know, so maybe it's memory loss and dyslexia, or a physical disability and ADHD, or whatever that combination is. Including sort of such a broad spectrum can actually be quite challenging. Rosie, you're working with companies and clients on a regular basis. How do you advise when they go, well, it's a really big umbrella?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I'm sure a lot of people in the room are tackling with every day as well. I think, I mean, the first part is, as Lisa said, it is their education part of actually getting them on board to even take on best practice recommendations, which is often where recommendations that are, you know, helping neurodivergent people are actually sitting. We're typically sitting in the best practice sort of area. So first of all, getting them on board to actually, you know, take on those best practice recommendations and see what their scoping is to actually make those changes as well. You know, time and time again, if people only want to conform to WCAG, you know, depending on what level they have capacity to in their teams. We take an approach where we kind of don't give them a choice, and we give them the best practice recommendation, whether they, you know, whether they like it or not. It's just part of the package. They're getting that recommendation as well. And also we talk a lot about impact within the types of issues and the things that we're talking to clients about, and bringing up those things that may not necessarily fall under strictly WCAG requirements, but are going to be really, really high impact, particularly for neurodivergent folks and folks with cognitive disabilities. If those are high impact issues, we're going to bring them up, we're going to chat about them, we're going to be talking about them. And I guess for the benefit of, from me as a consultant and as a business owner, is that I'm neurodivergent, and I'm happy to say to them, this is blocking me. Like, as a potential user, I'm not going to be able to access this in the way that I want to be able to access it. And that's something that, you know, I'm not really afraid to say as well. But I think thinking about that spectrum, Amanda, and like, you know, I don't think it's just with neurodivergence, it's with disability overall. You know, it's such a broad spectrum, and disabled people are so diverse, which is really cool and such a fun place to live in and to interact with community. But I also think, you know, our the discrimination that we face is more similar than the differences in our disability. And I think we can think of it similarly when we look at you know, technical guidance and standards and things like that. The discrimination, the barriers that we're facing when trying to access the web are more similar than the differences between our disabilities. And as someone who is neurodivergent but also has a physical disability, those intersections really, you know, come in clutch. And I have a lot of things that I can relate to with my blind friends as well, who also hate forms, and we have a little We Hate Forms club, but they're facing similar issues, but, you know, for different reasons. And I think it's about coming together with, not trying to look at the differences so much, but looking at those similarities in that discrimination that we are facing when accessing the web.
That answer. I love that answer, Rosie. It's 100% true. And so much of the things already brought up around your sort of your four main things, which were sensory, consistency, understanding. I mean, all of those actually have a much broader impact amongst various groups with barriers and disabilities. It was really interesting. I couldn't agree more. Rose, we've heard a couple of like standards branded about. I imagine while you've been doing this recruitment for accessibility teams, you've learned some new language. We've got our own language in the field, don't we?
I have, but I think, and go back to what Lisa said as well, like I just wrote that note of like, it actually, I think there's people get paralyzed and overwhelmed of there's so many things on the spectrum, there's so many disabilities, and there's so many things we need to cater for that employees kind of just freeze and then don't do anything. So, and I think, you know, breaking it down into simple, as you said, like I'm, you know, ADHD, but my neurodiverse and my friends that have disabilities, what works for me actually works really well for them. And it's as simple as when you have a job ad, and I'll put in the comments what we put on all of Aquent's job ads, but at the end we do, please let us know if we can provide any additional support for your interview process. And I think it's about really leading with open questions of like, what can we do to support you? What, like from the start, creating that, you know, supportive space. And I think in recruitment for accessibility, it's my favorite talent pool. I'm not going to lie. I feel like I've met my people. I'm like, yes, we understand. You understand what's important and you understand a lived experience, but the empathy and the curiosity to learn. I work quite closely with a big team of accessibility contractors, and every one of them has a different lived experience, and they have a different why, you know, why they're there, why they're trying to make change. But ultimately, they're trying to get the customer base and employees to, you know, open up, because as we know with neurodivergent, this was last year, but it's about 30 to 40% of the population. So it's like, it's a huge area. And then we're also seeing, I think there's a huge amount of neurodivergent people that are unemployed and don't have jobs. And it's like, these are the areas that we can start catering for and tailoring and supporting. And that's why, yeah, I love recruiting in this space. And I have learned a lot more. I'm always asking them, what's next, what's coming? And I think the big thing I hear, which I hear from all, is like, I just wish there was more financial and, you know, buy-in from exec and management when it comes to the importance of it, you know, and I hear that a lot. And I think it comes from the ground up, but it also comes from the top down.
Yeah, you need sort of the perfect sandwich. I'm going to take that because I think I want to run with that a little bit. I think it's a really interesting part of accessibility as an industry, is this whole, there's a groundswell, but you need sort of the top coming down as well, supporting it, not just with resources, but Rose, to be able to build out a team, some CEO has to go, yes, we're going to invest in that, and empower them to actually do something, which is sort of the other part of it. There are standards. WCAG addresses cognitive disability sort of kind of in some of the AAA criteria. But there are standards, and there's some current standards, and obviously documentation that Lisa's worked so hard at around making content usable for people with cognitive and learning disabilities. ISO released a plain language standard recently. And I'll start with Lisa, but then I'll probably go to Rosie after that. Lisa, is there any other documentation standards that we need more awareness around? Because like you said, this is an educational piece. Where to start?
Well, yeah, I mean, there is, I know the British Dyslexia Association made some way before we did. We're coming up with an update soon, partly to increase the scope, such as mental health and community feedback and stuff like that, and partly also to change the groupings. We've got 8 criteria. We're trying to merge them into 5 so that it makes it a bit easier to remember and wrap your mind around. So, you know, that there will be those changes, and there are also some specific things which aren't necessarily standards, but they're useful, such as a guide on user testing with people with cognitive learning disabilities and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm going to stick with the document that we have, which is a mix. You know, there's a section on it's a design guide, what to do, what to avoid, stuff like that. And it's also got personas. We kind of just wanted a single place where people can look and find things. It also meant we didn't have to work quite so hard on getting all the other documents in the W3C to include everything. They all have a lot of different criteria, such as WCAG, for instance, won't include things that aren't machine testable, reliably machine testable. If it uses human testing and judgment calls, it didn't get into the last version. So that, but a design team knows what to do. Do you know what I mean? So
I'd love to pick up on the design system part of that as well. So Rosie, I'm going to ask you about standards and documentation that you refer to or reference. But I also, Lisa, I think that's a really important part is design systems, design guides, recycle and reuse. Rosie, what are you pointing to right now?
Yeah, I'm pointing to a mixture of things. I think, you know, like Lisa said, there is some really great parts in, like, if we're looking to AAA standards, like there's certainly some really quick wins that we can get from there that are really helping in that cognitive space. The COGA usable documents, which I think has been referred to a couple of times. I'm not sure if that's like still the name for it, but that's what it's just stuck in my head, COGA. So I know it's pronounced different for other people. I think I've heard of COGA as well, it pronounced, but I always say COGA. Referring to that as well, I think there's some really, really great like community articles out there, and I'm going to put one of my favorite ones in the chat from TPGI. Hopefully people have seen it before, but it's called Beyond WCAG, Losing Spoons Online. It's probably like one of my favorite articles that I consistently refer back to. And I mean, I think more and more like as, and I would love to hear like what Rose thinks about this as well, is like as neurodivergent becomes trendy in the workplace, which like, I don't know if other people have noticed, especially on LinkedIn at the moment, we're seeing more and more like design systems popping up and more resources. And I mean, you know, as an accessibility professional, there's only so many things that you can read. Like I would just wish I could just absorb it all into my brain immediately. But there's lots of good ones out there, and I try to mash them together. And I think at the end of the day, like user experience and user testing is gold. And if we can get that direct feedback on the product or whatever it is, that's going to be the best thing to look at. But yeah, there's heaps of stuff out there online. Like it's like probably impossible to try and consume it all. Yeah, I think reference checking and looking amongst different things and trying to take an amalgamation of it is probably the approach that I take, as well as my lived experience, and then also user testing whenever we can.
Amazing. Rose, I know you're not in the standard space, but that's okay. I'd actually still like to understand from I guess your perspective, when there's so much information out there, and as Rosie sort of led us to, is, you know, LinkedIn itself has just got new stuff coming up all of the time. We have accessibility influencers. I didn't know that was a thing until COVID, and suddenly we have influencers. And there's a lot of information popping up. And are you seeing, you know, through that recruitment process, people who've really bumped up their LinkedIn profiles, for example, creating this content?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, obviously LinkedIn, as I said, it's got 1 billion users. LinkedIn has these algorithms that I definitely think they want to get rid of traditional resumes and potentially use their LinkedIn platforms for resumes in the future. And you know, they're trying these new online ways of, you know, you can do a job ad, apply for a job, you doing a video. I think there's a lot out there, and there's a lot of content, especially when I first got diagnosed. I think anyone that's been diagnosed, you know, through the process, especially as an adult, you kind of go into this like crazy sponge where you're trying to absorb all of this information, read every book, you know, listen to every professional. And it's an absolute state of overwhelm, especially people are writing blogs and posting things. And, you know, my main thing is that I get a series of information, lived experiences, specialists in the space, psychologists, you know, when you can sort of, the data and the information you're getting, if you can sort of make sure it's coming from multiple sources, not just an influencer that's, you know, talking on TikTok, talking about ADHD, because, you know, there's a lot of, you know, I guess there's sort of a lot of talk about people that have, you know, certain symptoms, and people don't. It's a spectrum. So we're all going to show up and come into it at different. Dyslexia is this, you know, everywhere. You're not going to sit on one end of it. So learning everything about just how one way person shows up at work and what they need at work, what they need online, or how they apply for jobs, or how they go through the process it's not one size, you know, one shoe fits all. Like it's a very big spectrum. So I think really filter your information and make sure that you're looking at, okay, is this person coming from a psychological, is it their lived experience, and what does that look like? Because there is such a state of overwhelm at the moment, especially a lot of people, you know, say things like, you know, I don't know where to go. I don't know how to apply for this job. There's so many ways to go around it. How does my LinkedIn look like? There's a bit of a stress of that. And I think that can stop people from actually getting the jobs or applying, especially people that's not there. They don't want to be on LinkedIn sharing posts every day or create a brand like that. So I think we have to be a little bit more understanding if people will do things differently. So, yeah.
But how do you think, and Rose, I'm actually going to start with you and then I'll work my way back because I'm curious about everyone's answer to this one. How do you think we as the accessibility professionals can work better to serve neurodivergent people?
Ooh, I think there's a lot of voices out there that maybe don't have the knowledge that you guys do or the backing. So there's a lot of buzzwords, there's a lot of things popping up, you know, like even just listening to Lisa and your lived experience and talking about that, you know, that information is sometimes, I think, quite sparse across the internet because people aren't posting or doing blogs. I think this forum coming together, collectives, you know, coming together on projects, working on tandem blogs, you know, using the right keywords on LinkedIn. So if I'm new into this industry and I'm a head of design and I want to find an accessibility person to talk to about user testing, that I can use those keywords to find you. So I think it's more about coming together, looking at what are some of the common threads and really having a consistent message of tangible stuff. And, you know, Bree's someone, I don't know if Bree's on it, but Bree has a design background. So utilizing your unique background to connect with that industry. So Bree, you know, going to designers, user testing, that makes Bree unique. So using whatever your background was or your side interest in order to sort of, you know, speak on that topic as well is really, really, I think, an amazing background as well.
That's
and hoping they're hard to find as well, because when I'm recruiting, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, there's sorry, I've got a kid who's nervous about getting to training on time. Dad's taking me to training.
When?
Now I'm on a call.
Where is he?
I don't know. Sorry. Kids. No accounting for them. So Lisa.
Yeah.
How can we as accessibility professionals work better to serve neurodivergent people?
So I guess the two things. When you're looking at something like WorkEgg or making content usable, we've looked across everything we could get hold of, Reddit, pulled out information, asked for public comment, started a community group to help collect it and talk to you. Do you know what I mean? And if we've missed anything out, please let us know. And so that when you work with a standard, then they've done a lot of that legwork for you and then created 8 objectives, or hopefully we're going to get it down to 5 objectives, right? So yes, I completely agree with what Rose is saying. Sometimes a disability is actually a symptom, right? Dyslexia, someone isn't learning to read and write despite trying, having a high enough IQ in other areas, and you know, so but why? It could be visual memory, it could be auditory discrimination, it could be phoneme processing, it could be all of them, could be a naming disability, you know, all of these kind of things together. But if you just speak to one person, they may think it's only auditory because that's the subgroup that they're in. So yeah, on the other hand, as Rosie said, there's a huge amount of commonality. So building users into the process all the way through when it's the research stage, you know, just pull up some personas, stick them in. We've got guidance of building users into your process, and you don't have to be a big company. If you're a small company or it's just you, I'm sure you have a friend who's a bit neurodivergent, and I'm sure you know someone whose memory isn't as good as it used to be. You can go around and just watch them get stuck trying to do some key tasks. And in a way, the most important task is giving feedback. You know, like it's all very nice saying, yeah, we're here to help, but can they contact you? And often if there's one thing that you're trying to do, it's you test that feedback where you get stuck. Can you then reach out, send an email, or, you know, are you stuck? You can't navigate the help, you get sent to a phone number that's got one of these menu systems that you can't navigate, and then you give up. In that you'll find most of your problems. And I think part of it is knowing what people are coming to you to do. So if they're trying to gather some key points and you buried those key points in a wall of words, lots of words to get there, or lots of numbers or something, they might not find that. So taking those key points, anything to do with health and safety, that your school is finishing early on Tuesday, so please pick up your kid. That has to be in bold, because otherwise, as my poor daughter, what happened often, they're going to be, you know, standing waiting 3 hours because you just didn't know. So those walls of words, you know, put that kind of information before the songs they learned this week. So it's a bit of thought, thinking what's the key things they need to do from their perspective, not necessarily from yours, but from their perspective. What do they need to know? What do you want them to know? And make sure they can get that and do those things. Just testing those things work, keeping them plain, those key information, you know, button looking like a button, you know, and bringing that around. It might even be as simple as asking your partner who hasn't been on the design team, so doesn't know what's the thing you're meant to click, or you know, someone who's a bit of a different background. There are a lot of cultural assumptions that you're making, and the benefit's going to be for everyone. But building in a bit of neurodiversity into the people you're showing it to will really help, and checking they can do it without you interfering, without you saying, oh, look, you know, it's over there, or you see that thing at the bottom, or you scroll like this. Yeah, they should scroll. Anyway. So
independence is a really key part of it, isn't it? Is that's ultimately what we're after, is that ability to be independently, be able to absorb and navigate and do all of the things we want to do in those digital realms. I think that's a really important part of this. Something you said, Lisa, reminded me of a presentation that I presented up in Brisbane a couple of weeks ago, and the other presenter was Tom Davis, and he talked. He's a content expert, and he talked about plain English in a really great way. And he talked about this inverted pyramid where the really important stuff needs to be at the top because you read less and less as you get down. And it was a really great reminder of the simple things that we can do from a content perspective to make things easy to understand, to know what the action is, not to convolute every sentence. Like, it should be nice and easy. So it just reminded me of that. And if you haven't connected with Tom Davis on LinkedIn, you should go and find him. He's fantastic, and knows heaps about making content great and accessible. Rosie, I'm going to ask you, and I left you for last for this particular question because you're really in the trenches with the Australian Accessibility Professionals group. Like, you know, you literally live with one. You're married to one. So you're in the trenches every day with people like myself and many of the people in this group actually listening to this webinar. And I'm curious your perspective, knowing all of us so well. You know, obviously many of us are really well intentioned, even if we don't have that lived experience. What's your advice for us to do better as an industry here in Australia?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and I've been like rapidly trying to like remember my points as we've been going through. The first thing is impact. I think like we often talk about like blockers or like barriers, and we talk about it often from an assistive technology perspective. And I think it's really important to remember that blockers and barriers that completely block you from using the website exist even if you're not using an assistive technology. And so it's really important to consider that impact when we're looking at websites or whatever product that we're looking at as well, and remembering considering that impact as an accessibility professional. I think the other part of it is, when we're looking at our usability testing schedules, maybe we're looking at just testing with folks who are using assistive technology. It's something I've seen before, making sure that we are including folks who are neurodivergent or have a cognitive or learning disability who don't necessarily use an assistive technology, but are still going to face barriers and still going to have really useful feedback that can impact our design. So, I think, I can't remember who said it on the panel, but thinking about it from as early as possible. I think it was Lisa, thinking about how we can embed it in our processes as well. The other part I was thinking about as we were talking about this is that a lot of teams in Australia, it's pretty likely you have someone who's neurodivergent on your accessibility team. Like, there's a lot of us neurodivergent folks in accessibility. We find our special interest. I mean, this is me personally. So my job is just to talk about my special interest, which is accessibility. It's like the coolest job ever. A lot of us do have neurodivergent folks on our team. So, listening to those folks, respecting those folks, using their lived experience when you can, where it's appropriate to, obviously. I can see the chat being like 1000% relatable. Yes, we have a lot of neurodivergent accessibility professionals out here. We're advocating. Please listen to us when we're talking about the barriers that we're facing. And also remember from the other perspective, and this goes for all disabled accessibility professionals, is that it doesn't stop when you leave your work, and it doesn't stop when you switch off, and you can leave and go do something else. Like, we're still facing barriers. So if we are a little bit snippy with you, please don't take it personally. We've probably just been facing a lot of barriers outside of our work as well. So that can be amplified. So considering impact, making sure it's included in usability testing and all the way through, just like everything else we say about accessibility, neurodivergent people and people with cognitive and learning disabilities need to be included in that process as well. And also using the community that's around you. I always say that accessibility is a community journey, and it's no different when we talk about neurodivergent people and bringing our neurodivergent professionals along for those journeys. And even more important, to make our accessibility consultancies or wherever we might be working as accessible as possible for neurodivergent staff, for disabled staff. And that's how we keep building our knowledge and our experiences as well.
I want to pick up the thing around assistive technology, but before I do that, I actually have a side question for you, Rosie. You've talked about your experience as a professional, and occasionally it's just overwhelming. You don't get to turn off. Those are the same barriers you're going to face when you're not sitting beside a client. We talk in this industry, at least the talk over the last couple of years, when I sit down with other people like me, is around burnout, and just like, when we get together, it's really good for us to be together because we need sort of that revitalizing. Do you worry, particularly with the diversity that we have within the Australian industry here, do you worry about burnout?
Yeah, I absolutely worry about burnout. It's front of mind all the time. I experienced some really severe burnout in the middle of last year, and it led to me taking like over a month off work because of it. It was really horrible. I did not enjoy the experience of being burnt out, and I think it is something that we do have to really consider. And I think there was a great talk, I think it was by Shell Little at AXCON last year, literally about burnout. And I watched it and I was like, just broke down crying. I was like, oh, I feel so seen and so validated. But I really think one of the main things and the core thing for me that brought me back from that period of really extreme burnout was community. For me, that was accessibility community, but that was also my disability communities as well, and having that community support around. And I think it is so vital for accessibility professionals to be able to be in that community, to be able to express frustrations that they might be feeling, and have that solidarity, and that we are making change and we are making difference. And I think the other part is that often we're not celebrating our accessibility professionals as much as we could be. There's like great accessibility awards out there, especially in Australia. I'm an absolute fan of all of them. But I often think about, like, how can we be celebrating our accessibility professionals more, who are all often sitting there being like, oh, I worked on this project, I helped with this project, I made this come to fruition, and everyone's a really vital part. But I'm really excited about how we can celebrate our accessibility professionals more, and we can celebrate our champions, accessibility champions as well, in organizations more, to not be burnt out. And yeah, for me, that's community, accessibility community. And really a big part of it was making the digital accessibility Tasmanian community as well vital for me, but vital for the people here in Tasmania too. But yeah, engaging in community is probably the biggest thing I can say in avoiding that burnout, or working through that burnout when you are in that state.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. I didn't know obviously about last year, so I appreciate you sharing.
No, that's so fun. I'm happy to share.
That personal experience. I can tell you that when I went to TPAC last year, unfortunately Lisa wasn't there in person, but I was, and a part of what makes TPAC great, aside from so TPAC is the technical planning area meetings, AC meetings for W3C. And aside from the enormous amount of work that we actually get done over the course of a week, which probably makes up for 3 months worth of work that doesn't get done over online. Aside from that, it's actually all of the being together that, like, I think I wrote on LinkedIn on my sort of in the airport on the way home, like, my cup is full. I just really needed it. I didn't realize, but at that time I was pretty done. And the more people I spoke to openly about that in the profession, the more I realized that that was not just me, is that you actually need those moments to just deep breath and refresh. Now I am going to get onto the assistive technology because it's been brought up and I can't just let it go. In part because assistive technology for neurodiversity is broad ranging. For cognitive disabilities in particular, learning disabilities, is quite broad. There's some real specific help and advice from the COGA team, Lisa. So I'm going to start with you there, around designs and icons and things that can be done. But when you think assistive technology and helping neurodiversity, where does your mind immediately go to?
So my mind, from my experience, a big one is the spell checker. So people don't think of it as an assistive technology, and sometimes it will disable it, and then I'm stuck. If the right click, doesn't work, that I can change the spelling, then copy and paste is an important facility, because I'm all the time using it, whether you've sent me a code or there's some information I need, the address of my bank for this form, or all this kind of thing. Copy and paste, really important. Calendar integration. Now we have set reminders, allow people to set reminders. You've got this meeting and we got great email from you, Amanda, and you can add it to your calendar, and then when you think it's at a different time, you can see, but it's on my calendar at this time, right? And so that's really helpful, and you can find the calendar that works for you. If you're not good with time, some of them have a line that shows the current time, so you can see, oh, my next meeting's in a couple of blocks. So having the integrated reminder, having it work with with my calendar. To me, that's an assistive technology that this meeting was compatible with. People are using text to speech, but they're using it differently. So JAWS is the text to speech that is very well known in the blind community, but we're going to struggle with the crazy control things that they have. So we're often using the text to speech that comes with our phone or something else add-on, and we're more likely to point to the part of the screen that we want read. So sometimes how it reads it, it can come out with different problems than JAWS users experience. Another issue then is that the headers, because we can't increase the speed. A lot of us have auditory processing issues, so increasing the speed doesn't work. So we're going to skim through those headers. So I think Rosie mentioned, just put that really important text at the top, but and make that plain English, plain language. I would say also do that to your headers. Take your headers, take the labels on your control. You don't have to have sarcasm in your control labels. Make them plain, understandable, clear, and then we can skim to the bit of the content that we need and run our text-to-speech engine from that on add-on. So that's going to make, I think, a big difference.
That's awesome. Rose, do you use assistive technology, or is there anything that, from an assistive technology point of view, that your mind immediately goes to?
Yeah, it was funny when you started that, I was like, I don't know what I use. And then as soon as you started speaking, I was like, yep, and yes, and yeah. So yeah, for me, being super ADHD and probably dyslexic, it hasn't been diagnosed, but I find it really hard in long meetings to, like generate some bullet points. So what I do is I sometimes auditory, like record the meeting and then get ChatGPT to summarize that, if it says nothing confidential, but and then I also use Grammarly AI as well. So Grammarly helps me on a day with spelling, and my brain will go really fast. So I write really fast, but it doesn't necessarily make sense a lot of the time. So using AI to really help me summarize it. I almost think sometimes I write in AI, I go, can you make this understandable for not neurodiverse people, so it's a little bit more ordered. And then half of that I was like, I use all of that assisted technology in every day, and I think without that I would struggle to do the admin and the tasks in my life at work that are so necessary for my job. And if I didn't have that, would I be able to focus on what I do really well, which is people and placing and help, so I think assisted technology, I think we limit it to go, okay, screen readers, great, cool, we'll put, or we'll do this technology, but there's so many other assistive technology, especially for neurodivergent people, like even blogs. If there's a blog and at the top you can listen to the blog instead of read it, I will absolutely listen to it on double speed and absorb it. So I think it's about, writing a great accessibility blog and having all the detail in there, but not making it auditory. You miss out on a whole lot of people that would find that really useful. So assistive technology. And then for recruitment, I'm constantly in every single interview, I ask candidates what's assistive technology you may need, what's some of the things we can do to make it easier for you. So I really try and make sure that there's a lot, out there for people that need it as well. And I don't see it as a weakness if people need to, write down all the questions and take a breath and a bit of time to come back to the answers. I see that as a really positive thing. So understanding people process things differently. So recognizing that in a traditional interview setting or an online application is very important. So yeah, it was funny. I was like assistive technology, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I use it every day, all day.
It reminds me, there's one of the videos that W3C did. And I'm pretty sure it's Shoddy who has this line about, necessary for some, convenient for all. And, you know, it's convenient for people who don't necessarily need spell check, but could use it. I think we've all used it. That's fair. So yeah, it's one of those things. I think that we tend to think of assistive technology as like screen readers or something physical, like a walking cane or something like that. And we actually often don't think about all the other little things that help us get through, especially our digital content. Rosie, assistive technology. So not just what you might use, but also some of the things that you've seen in the space.
Yeah. I have such a love for assistive tech, and I've literally written a poem about it, about my love for assistive tech. I won't recite it for you right now, but I have a big love for assistive tech, and also like things that people might not traditionally think of as assistive tech. I know Grammarly's been mentioned. I feel like we all need a shirt. It's like Grammarly's an assistive technology, and I don't care what you think. And
I would buy that shirt.
Yeah, okay, great. I'll go make it after this. But yeah, Grammarly's a great one. I saw someone drop in like goblin tools in the chat. I'm very interested in that. This is like the perfect marketing for me. I don't know what it is, but I want to use them. You know, even things like if we're transitioning to that more physical world as well, things like noise cancelling headphones, if we're looking into that space as well, something that we might be considering, you know, if we're doing usability testing and those sorts of things too. Things like, you know, having a Pomodoro timer or some sort of timer available, not to shut someone out immediately from a website, but you know, even if we're during usability testing, like making sure people are aware of the time and know how much they have left, not to pressure them or anything, but to help people keep track of it. I know that like I could just hyper focus on things for like hours at a time, and then suddenly it's like 7 p.m. and I haven't drunk any water, and I haven't eaten all day. So being really aware of the time is really important. Text to speech, obviously, a massive one as well. And I think one that's like really piqued people's interest at the moment, like especially with like how many like different voices that you can have with it. Like it is a little bit more like broad and diverse than like screen readers traditionally are as well. So I definitely got some people's attention on like, I think like, is there an option for like Snoop Dogg to do your text to speech? I'm pretty sure that's an option I've seen recently as well. So expanding to that as well. But even things like changing our colors on screen. So actually using our, you know, inbuilt, particularly on Microsoft, using our inbuilt tools like high contrast mode. A lot of neurodivergent people might not like the traditional high contrast mode, but you can actually completely customize the colors as well. So, you know, if you have a particular favorite color, you can change it to be that's something easier to read. I know a lot of people struggle with glare too from their screen. So even changing those whites to be like a cream color instead can be really helpful to people. And, you know, that's an assistive technology that's traditionally for people who are blind and low vision, but has benefits and is used as an assistive technology for neurodivergent folks as well. So I think there's a lot of overlap in those areas too. I think that was all I was going to cover, but yeah, big pluses to spell check. Oh, the other thing I was going to say was, yeah, AI as an assistive tech. I know, Rose, you mentioned it as well. And I think that's like one space, like potentially, you know, like our large language models, like, you know, there's a lot of chat of like AI and accessibility, but like, what about like AI and assistive tech? And I know people who are like talking in the chat as well about Grammarly helping with tone. And like, I've definitely find that in like my emails, sometimes I can come across as really abrupt or blunt. I'm just being a really clear communicator, but sometimes people like those niceties around it, and using things like ChatGPT or inbuilt like Gmail, for example, has some sentences or some autofill to help you with those niceties at the start and your end of your email, I definitely use those as well. So yeah, thinking about how we might think about those sorts of things as assistive technologies as well.
I attended a workshop maybe 3 weeks ago that was basically trying to find a use case for, I guess it was more like, it was around branding, but like tone of language for branding, and whether AI could help content authors and ops people get the right tone when they were inputting content into a website, so into their CRM. So it was, which was really just fascinating for me, because I hadn't really, you know, when I hear AI and accessibility, you almost immediately get your back up as an accessibility professional. You're like, no, this is a human thing. But it was really interesting because there are things that we can use AI for, and the workshop itself was really fascinating for me about all of the things I thought of that like AI could help with. And it would always need a human to overlook it, but to help with tone and like the type of voice from a brand point of view was really interesting for me.
And also, like, just to jump in, I saw something recently on LinkedIn that was like, if AI could do my washing, clean the house, and then I'll do the art, I'll do the... So I think AI can be really used to do that nitty-gritty minutiae stuff so that you can really focus on what you're good at. And if an ADHD person like myself struggles with writing a giant policy and we can use assistive technology to support them, I think that's the way of looking at versus coming for our jobs. It's like, can it come for the things we're not, you know, that we need support in? But yeah, definitely amazing for tone, and also summarizing meetings. That's a big one. And calendar is why I use Calendly to book meetings, and I use a lot of Calendly. Like, I basically use so much on my calendar to help me to drink water, eat food, feed my dog, all the things I forget to do. So yeah.
I love it. Oh gosh, there's so many. I think the one thing that we didn't really cover, and maybe Lisa, you'd probably be best just with the years you've put in, honestly, to cognitive research around replacing words with icons, images, pictures, because that's not something we've talked about, and that's an assistive technology too, one that's very purpose-driven for people with learning disabilities and very severe cognitive disabilities. We're seeing a real rise, particularly in government departments. I've got a lot of clients who are doing easy read documents, which have lots of pictures and very short sentences. Any insight or some thoughts around that type of assistive tech?
Well, there is a standard coming out called ADAPT, which is allowing people to augment their content with a reference to what the thing is, what they're talking about, so that an icon can be loaded at the user end. And if they don't have a thing to support it, you can allow, we actually made a browser extension, I think it's open source, that people could download and load their symbol set, and then people can augment it, their content to the extent that they need. Adding pictures is fantastic, as is adding alternatives for numbers and numeric type of content. But symbols, there are a lot of people, we're talking people with severe communication disabilities who they've learned a set of symbols. So you might have someone with a vocabulary of say 50 words, which is helpful, but but they can manage 1,000 symbols or 500 symbols, where you can already participate and join the conversation. So the problem is sometimes that they're copyrighted. So people have learned a language, and then the company that made the symbol set copyrighted it on their end. So if you add that's the problem ADAPT was really trying to solve. So instead of putting in just the pictures, you could also put in a reference to like a big number, which is the bliss symbolic number, or there's also some what reserved for what this page link goes to, say this is to our home page or our contact us page and stuff like that. And then at the user end, this can be presented to them in the way they know. So in the case of, let's say, destinations of pages, right? So if something's contact us, I need more help on this. You could pull out that event and link and put it, now that you know as the user agent what to do, you could put it on a toolbar at the top of the page so that they know if they get stuck, they can always look there. So there's a lot of stuff there with Adapt. That's a whole new community of people who can only speak to people who've learnt their symbol set, which is ridiculous, right? And now they hopefully will be able to speak across symbol sets and to everybody else. So there's a whole new community of people who we could be supporting. In the meantime, or if that's too much, just adding some icons that are clear what they are will help. That's a good getting started thing. But looking into the work of Adapt, I think will help take it further. It's still new. They're looking for places to adopt it, and then it can get to the next stage. So if you're prepared to be an early adopter, we made also a demo, open source. Again, it's on GitHub. It works with the older syntax, which has now changed a bit, but you can take it and put a link on your page, a button on your page. You can press it, and then icons get added. So if they have their own icon set that they prefer, it will load it. If not, they can just press this button and your icons, different icons get added, standard icons. So it allows for that. And AI is fantastic. It's doing great things, but it's not yet dependable. A lot of people, when they're using it for all kinds of things, it'll make up stuff, that sounds right. And so that can be a bit of a problem when you're using it as an assistive technology. So it's a fantastic tool for adding what the symbols could be. But then I think it needs a review first to say, yeah, that one's right. Great, done the job, made it simpler. But I think expecting the user to be able to differentiate between, even 10% of the time they get the wrong thing. we did a social 2 weeks ago. We were making these social stories, trip to the zoo or something like that. And it was beautiful. And then we did another one where to add the pictures, and some of the pictures had made up animal. Took a moment for me to notice there's no such animal. This animal has 5 legs. Slight difference. So yeah, needs someone to look it over at this point. Hopefully
it's very exciting though, isn't it?
Very
exciting. And it's why I wanted to ask you the question, because I knew you'd talk about Adapt. It's very exciting. And I think that it's really important that we see sort of these, like, really from something as, I guess, quote unquote, simple as spell check to something like replacing words with icons, how impactful that can be. And so much of accessibility is about flexibility, right? So if we allow flexibility within our digital products, then people can use them the way they want to. Because if they're after your content, we should let them have it. That's my rule of thumb. Look, we are actually coming up to the last 5 minutes, and I do have to give Bree a couple of minutes to do the what's coming up next. But I have one last question, and literally you're only going to have 2 minutes each. So I apologize in advance. But Rose, I'm going to start with you. Firstly, thank you so much for being on the panel and for answering all of my questions. It's been a fascinating discussion. What is it that we as OZeWAI and the people sitting in this room can do to help help get the journey started for recruiters who are doing things you're doing.
Okay, timing myself. No,
No, don't.
I think it's just exactly what this is: webinars, connecting, advocating for yourself as well. Remember, your job is niche and so valuable to an organization. So, putting things out, blogs, post videos in a content that works well for you. And then I also think, just connecting with different recruiters and companies, and in the company you're currently in, if you're not self-employed, speak to your HR representative, or go even further than that, see if there's a recruiter that works on the panel that would like you to do some user testing on how you apply for a job, so that you can make it better for more colleagues to come into the space. But ultimately, I think it's really, unfortunately, leaning into some of the commercial platforms like LinkedIn, your resume, blogs, and getting out there so people know who you are and making a bit of a brand. And I know Rosie does that very well, if I pick on you. But I think, you're someone, I've read your content, your blogs, and I connected with you. So be findable, if that makes sense. That's my word. And thanks everyone for listening. I really appreciate it. I feel really safe here to talk about my lived experiences. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Rose. Rosie, look, I'm so excited that we got you on a panel, firstly, because if nothing else, it means I get to see you. So this is always good. But yeah, what is it? I mean, you've opened Modality. You've got Matt by your side. You're taking over Tasmania. You've got the meetup groups running. What can we do as OZeWAI, as the people in this room, help spread that mission?
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting one, especially in TAS, and we have other problems, or not. That's a really poor way to put it. Digital accessibility is, I wouldn't say new in TAS, it's growing in TAS, and we have combinations of things as well in terms of digital literacy, and a lot of the conversations that I'm having are surrounding how we can connect digital literacy and accessibility together. And I'm really excited. I'm actually working on a podcast at the moment about digital literacy, or literacy in TAS, but specifically in digital literacy as well, and how we bring things together. So I think considering the wide expanses of experiences for people, and considering the wide experiences of people with disability as well. And, I always harp on about community, but, I'm so happy for everyone to be here as well, and continuing fostering that community. I'm so glad that I got my start from the Perth Web accessibility community as well. And, so many people have talked about it in the chat as well as being really vital for neurodivergent people in their workplaces and in their lives as well. So yeah, fostering community, accessibility is a community journey. And I'm so glad that everyone here is a part of that journey as well. And join OZeWAI, continue attending things, attend your local meetups if you can. And yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here. And if you're in TAS or you're visiting TAS, check us out. We would love to have you come along. We also do have a hybrid meeting for all of our things. So if you're interstate and there's a topic that you're interested in, come along. We would absolutely love to have you along too, and hear about all the amazing advocates and champions that are in Tasmania, because there's a lot of us, and it's really, really exciting.
Thanks, Rosie. Lisa, I feel like I've been a part of so many communities. I'm so lucky. And Lisa and I met through the W3C community. So firstly, thank you so much for joining us at the very beginning of your day, and I appreciate it so much. What can we do to help support the work that you're doing at W3C? Those who aren't members, but those who are for sure, but those who aren't members, how can we support the work at COGA, at APA, at AG?
So if you're not a member, well, one thing you can do as you're doing is get the word out. A lot of people don't know that there's this supplement for WorkEgg that focuses on inclusion for people with learning cognitive disabilities. So that's one huge thing that you can do, getting the word out. And if your bank isn't supporting you, send it to them. You know, all this kind of stuff. It's a W3C note. It's a AG's Work Ag supplement. So it has credibility. Another thing is we have a developer resource page. If you're making, you know, we've got 10 tips and all these kind of things, but if you're making any resources and you want to share them, let me know. I can put a link. We're very happy to have feedback. If you see in your user testing that there's something that we missed, fantastic, let us know. You know, there's always more. Another thing is we've got two communities. One is user community, and you don't have to be a member to join that. So that's cognitive accessibility community group, and gathering user needs and stuff like that, and then they pass it on to the task force. You don't have to be a member. And we're just making a new one that's starting. It's just started 2 weeks ago, I think, on internationalization. We're talking about plain language. We're always talking about English, and actually we're talking about American English usually. So what's the differences? It's not just localization for in getting over cognitive barriers. There's also more than just languages. Sometimes it's where you expect to find things, what colors mean, making sure our work is truly international. And if there are multiple languages that you're involved with, then we're trying to get some of this stuff into the next version in WorkAg. We need to know that it can work across languages, right? So internationalization, it's inclusion in yet a different dimension. Not
Love
just yeah. So that's another place you can get involved.
Amazing. Well,
I'll look for the links to them.
We have hit our time, and I reckon we could go for another hour and a half, but Bree, I will let you have a couple of minutes. I just want to say a quick thank you, as always. An absolute pleasure to moderate a panel. I get a complete joy out of doing this. I get to have amazing conversations every couple of months. So thank you, everyone.
It was so good. Thank you. I love doing this, and it's just growing every month. We're just building up these discussions and really building that community out there. Thank you, everyone, for being involved. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us. We always love to support the W3C and the work that you're doing. And there's a lot of our members are in Australia. I'm just going to put a couple of things in. You know, we've registered for the next Ask the Professionals. If you haven't already, it's about designers and accessibility. We've got some pretty amazing speakers for that. We've already got a start for what will be August and September, where we're talking about small businesses and not-for-profit. And September will be around accessibility training. I've also put a link in the chat to OZeWAI's PAL. This is our product accessibility list. We just added another 60 products to it today, a few days ago. So, and thank you to a couple of people on the call today who have been helping us do that scoring. Yeah, so I don't know if you want me to call you out, but you know who you are. Thank you so much. That's been really helpful. And we've got a lot of these community projects that we're doing. We'd love to have you involved as well. Let us support the local meetups. That's what we're here for, and the local events as well. So yeah, join OZeWAI and help us support the meetups near you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you to our wonderful panelists.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you.
Fantastic
Thanks
event.
so much.